Welcome, everybody, to the Connection Project with Sally. I am back for another episode, and today is a solo episode, and I don't have a guest. Yeah, I've been putting off these solo episodes, and I'm not sure why, but it really kind of digs right into what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm really so glad to have you all here with me today, um, listening to what I have to say. And that brings me to my topic today. And I had a few things that I wanted to talk about, but I really landed on self-love because I think that that really, really is impactful for a lot of us, right? What does that even mean? Self-love. Sounds so easy, right? Just give yourself a little love, a little pat on the back. Why is that so hard for all of us? I don't know if you as listeners feel like it's hard for you, but God, it's freaking hard for me. I was going to talk today about a retreat that I just hosted, which was absolutely amazing in Sedona, Arizona, with 12 magical women and my co-host Christy, a soul sister of mine, and we hosted our first retreat. And I was really going to talk about that today. And then I went down this rabbit hole about things that came up for me in the retreat, and then it went to self-love. So I'm just going to kind of go with it today and see where um my intuition takes me. But it got me thinking about, the retreat was amazing and we had the most amazing women. And it was really a jump off a cliff for us to do this retreat in Sedona. Hosting a retreat with someone I've never met in person, which is my co-facilitator, Christy, who has an amazing business, Live Powerfully. She's a yogi, she's an Ayurvedic practitioner, and she does all of the things. She had her own business, but scaled back. Now she has a spot in that business. I mean, she has her own business, but she had her own yoga studio, scaled back from that a little bit. And she also does inner alignment coaching. And we met each other, and I probably should have had her on today, but we met each other in some self-help training that we were doing with a mentor of ours, Kim Beekman, and we did inner alignment training. And we worked together for about 2 years, I bet, doing our training with getting connected to our childhood trauma and learning how to help people connect back to themselves and let go of their childhood trauma. And so we did a lot of intensive work, and then we learned how to do that work with other people. And that is a big part of what I do and what she does. But we decided to get together, having never met each other in person. That sounds insane. Someone said to me, "That is the most insane thing. What were you thinking?" But luckily for us, everything went pretty well. And Christy's from the Chicago area, the suburbs, I think, of Chicago, and I'm from upstate New York. And so we met for the first time in magical Sedona, where we brought together 12 amazing magical women that we called in energetically. And I believe we called them in energetically. There's no doubt in my mind. And so with that, did things come up for me during the retreat? The retreat went beautifully. We had some hiccups on the way. And so for all my coaches or entrepreneurs out there, or people that are thinking about transition, this is a good episode for you because all the shit is going to come up. All the shit came up for me. And I really want to kind of dig into that and how you can get past it. Right. So that brought me to the self-love piece because I feel like I still struggle in that area. And I feel like I've been doing my work and I've been on my healing journey, I don't know, 3 years now. But boy, it cycles. And so I had a bit of imposter syndrome during the retreat. Christy probably doesn't even know about this yet, but I had a bit of imposter syndrome. I had a couple moments where I felt like, wow, am I like really here? Am I really able to hold space for all these women? And I felt like I could. I definitely felt like I could, and I wanted to, but there were moments where I felt a little unsure. And I was sick on top of it, which typical energetically. I don't know what the heck happened, called something in, lost my voice, had a little bit of laryngitis, but luckily wasn't too bad. So I felt like I could show up for the women, and I showed up in my ceremonies. And we did some amazing things. Christy brought the yoga and the movement and the meditation, and I brought the meditation and the breath work and some shamanic journeying. And we did all the things. We hiked and we meditated up on Bell Rock. And I feel like the women had really, really magical experiences, and that just lit me up. But even though all that happened, I still had these moments where I just felt like, wow, do I belong here? Like, am I supposed to be here? Am I good enough? Am I enough? And that brought me down this rabbit hole of self-love. And am I worthy? And am I enough? Um, and that shit, I had to tell you, like, if you're an entrepreneur listening or a coach or just in your day-to-day life, like when that shit shows up and your energetics are off, people can tell. So you want to keep it in check, right? And that's what I do. Like that's my job. But I'm human and stuff happens. And so it really took me down this Brene Brown rabbit hole about self-love and how important it is for our relationships, for our work relationships, for my relationships and holding a retreat and working with my partner, um, my relationships with my kids and my grandkids and my husband is that self-love piece, right? I can't really farm that out. That's my responsibility to take care of my energetics and how I feel about myself. And I don't know if you guys ever feel this, but sometimes I just don't feel like I hit the mark or I do the comparison thing. And so I wanted to talk about that because we're all human, right? We all have these human experiences. And even though some of us are out here doing this work, again, we're human. We struggle just like the rest of you. And I think we need to talk about it, which is why I do this podcast, right? I want to keep it real, which is one of the things that Brene Brown talks about, keeping it real. Um, how can we cultivate more self-love? And I think I wanted to talk about her 10 rules. So when I started to explore this topic, her 10 rules of self-love, which seems so basic, but I really wanted to go over them and kind of just hit on them because this really did come up for me in the retreat. Um, where I needed to be the person for all these other people. And I think I was the person, and my partner was the person, but I still would be kind of a liar if I didn't say that I had moments where I had a little imposter syndrome. And I was so nervous about wanting the experience to be amazing um, for my retreat guests. And I feel like it was, but sometimes you attach too much to the outcome and not so much being in the moment and trying to keep yourself in the moment and keeping your energetic field going. And I know that's a little bit of what you may think is the woo, but it's really not. It's the energy in the room, the self-love. And so I'm going to share with you Brene Brown's top rules for self-love. You are enough, which I struggle with sometimes. I don't know, like think about that. Do you struggle with that sometimes? Am I enough? The second rule is share your whole story and your whole heart. And this also really connected with me in my coaching world. And so you nurse coaches out there, if you're listening, or coaches or entrepreneurs, this hits all the buttons. So I'm thinking about doing a small course on this. This hits all the buttons. Number three, engage with the world. So as a coach, if I'm not engaging with the world and I'm not showing up on socials, people don't see what I'm doing. They're not feeling my energy. They're not feeling my excitement if I'm launching another um, retreat, or they're not feeling my excitement about my own podcast or the next thing I'm promoting. So engaging with the world. There's nothing wrong with like backing it off and um, resting, but you can't like watch Netflix for 3 weeks, right? You have to engage with the world. And we'll get into this a little more, but four, vulnerability is the birthplace of love. Vulnerability is so important, guys. Like we have to show up. We have to show our vulnerable side. Um, Getting vulnerable, letting go of your armor is number six. And yeah, I think some people don't even know they have armor. I didn't even know I had armor, right? But boy, was I armored up, way armored up. And we'll get into that a little bit more. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you love, right? How many times do we say to ourselves, oh my God, that was so stupid, Sally. Why would you do that? Oh my God, that was ridiculous. I wouldn't say that to my friend. I wouldn't say that they were stupid. I would never say that. So why would we say that to ourselves? Because we made a mistake, right? Because we go into that shameful, guilt-ridden place that we're not enough. Back to number one, we're not enough. Um, And yeah, when we talk to ourselves like that self-deprecating talk is bad. It is just bad for us. Letting go of perfectionism. That's a big one. That's a big one for you entrepreneurs out there. Letting go of perfectionism. We cannot always do things perfect. Nobody wants perfect. Like we think we live in a world where it has to be perfect, but honestly, if I go to a coach or I hire somebody, I don't want someone that's perfect. I really want someone who's real. So we have to let go of that perfectionism. Be grateful. I struggle with this. I do really well at this for a while. Um, and then I struggle. I find the things I can find the things wrong with anything, right? In my real self. And then I have to talk to myself and remind myself, like, yeah, you have so much to be grateful for. Why are you focusing on this one thing that isn't perfect, right? Back to the perfectionism. And number 10 for Brene Brown is practice authenticity. And really, again, people want you to be authentic. They don't want you to have a bunch of bullshit. They don't want to see a big facade. I mean, when you see, like we say, keep up with the Joneses, when you see your neighbor and they have this amazing house and amazing, and their life seems so amazing, there's always some shit behind that. I'm telling you, there's always something behind that. Keep it real. You don't have to let every little dirty secret out, but you keep it real for people. People want to see that people are not perfect. Um, and so those were the 10 things. And so when I was reading those, I was like, wow, that goes for a lot of stuff. Like I wasn't expecting to get into this as much, but I really felt like, well, that pretty much sums it up on what I need to be talking about. And what, as an entrepreneur, I need to share with people because this is a list for entrepreneurs for sure. And when you go into the entrepreneurial world, and you want to start connecting with people and you want to start getting business, um, all of these 10 rules of self-love of Brene Brown's, I mean, they hit right on. I mean, as soon as I was reading them, I'm like, oh, wow, this is really what entrepreneurs, coaches, people in business, people who wherever need it. But it really hit home for me as an entrepreneur. And it hit home for me as the retreat host. Um, as I'm getting ready to launch my second retreat with Christy, wanting to make sure I fully check all these things. Um, when I go next time. And I continue to work on them. I talk about my stuff, my insecurities, because I think everybody has insecurities, right? And we need to talk about them. And I don't feel like it makes me less of a coach or less in what I do. I bring what I experience to people. And I think part of this podcast is wanting to be real with people and wanting to talk about that. Um, and so, what do we talk about with Brene Brown? I mean, she is amazing. If you haven't heard of Brene Brown, um, it's possible, but you've probably been living under a rock. She's got a couple Netflix specials. She's written a million books, and you should just definitely check her out if you have not. And I haven't taught with a lot of her stuff recently, but or in the past, but it's really been kind of coming to light for me to be using some of her stuff because it is really potent and she keeps it real. And one of the things she says is just talking to yourself like you would someone you love, right? The other thing I was reading about her, or a quote from her, is there will be times when standing alone feels too hard. And I have felt that. Feels too scary, and we will doubt our ability to make our way through the uncertainty. Someone, somewhere will say, don't do it. Don't quit your job. Don't become an entrepreneur. Don't try to host a retreat. You don't have what it takes to survive the wilderness. And if you are an entrepreneur out there, it is the wild, wild west. It is the wilderness. That is when you reach deep, deep into your wild heart and remind yourself, I am the fucking wilderness. Like I am that. So I can do this. She may not have said, fuck, but I did. And that's how I feel like I am the wilderness, right? You are the wilderness. You have to dig deep when you're trying to create this self love or you're trying to work through your healing. And if you're an entrepreneur, all your shit shows up when you start to move into entrepreneurship, coaching, whatever it is, starting a business as a solopreneur, your stuff will show up. And these 10 pieces of self love are huge because they transcend so many different things. But I really felt them in my entrepreneur world, in my personal world, but really in my entrepreneur world. And she was saying, if you want to make the most of your abilities and become the most self-actualized version of yourself, you can. Then you have to actually love yourself first. Self-acceptance is the key to meaningful change, right? And I don't know how many of you out there play the comparison game and social media. I use social media. Obviously, I'm doing this podcast. I am going to market it, but social media, it really creates us to be able to this comparison game. And man, you can't do it. It's not fruitful. It doesn't make you feel good. You've got to stay in your lane of what feels good for you energetically, tapping into that heart space and deciding what feels good for you as you're moving through your business or your partnership or your life. Like what feels good to you? Don't worry what Mary Jane next to you is doing. Do what feels good for you. Show people what feels good for you. And that's what people are going to tap into. Stop trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. I've said it before, when you're a triangle. Own your stuff. Know how you feel about things. Do what lights you up. Love yourself first. You are enough, right? You are enough. I am enough. But sometimes we all struggle. We all struggle with that. And I want you to know that you're literally not alone with that. Not alone with the struggle. We all have it. We all do it. We have to find our gratitude and the joy in our heart and in our life and in our business. Like if the business isn't fun, then why do it? Why leave the 9-to-5 corporate to be a solopreneur or an entrepreneur if you're going to hate it, right? You have to find the joy and you have to find what lights you up. Talking to yourself, letting yourself know, putting the Post-its on the mirror every morning. And I know it's more, and some people will say this, and I know it's more than just a positive affirmation, right? That's not going to fix you. A positive affirmation isn't going to just do it, right? There's some deep healing work that sometimes has to happen for some of us. Like for me, excavating my old trauma, like I have to do that. It's not just going to be a positive affirmation for me. But if you're starting somewhere, that's okay. Everybody doesn't have to dive into the deep end of the pool right away in a self-healing journey, right? So putting the Post-it note on the mirror when you're brushing your teeth. I am enough. I am worthy to be in this role, whatever role that is, mom, wife, partner, human being, entrepreneur, coach, whatever it is. And finding the gratitude and the joy every day in that. We live in this culture of scarcity. We never have enough. Brene Brown talked about this a lot. If you look at her TEDx talks, she'll talk about this. We don't have enough. We don't have the right car. We don't have the right house. We don't have enough money. Our kids aren't in the right schools. Not enough, not enough. We're never reaching the mark. We're always striving for this place that it's like this expectation, this end game that maybe is not achievable. I'm not saying you shouldn't strive for things, but sometimes we put it out there so hard that we can't achieve it. Or it's so hard to achieve it, like we're never satisfied. We never arrive. We're trying to kick the field goal and they keep moving the goalpost. I think sometimes that's really a struggle. So just thinking about that doesn't mean you shouldn't strive to be better or you shouldn't work to heal yourself. I'm not saying that, but I am saying like have reasonable reasonable expectations that you can meet and then move past them. Always knowing and remembering where you are in the present right now, and appreciating that and have some joy and gratitude in the moment versus always reaching, always reaching. Enjoying the ride a little bit versus getting to the destination. Knowing that you're enough, even in the struggle. You did the best you could sometimes. That's all we can do. I was struggling a little bit in that retreat with this imposter syndrome. Um, and I don't know if anyone noticed that, but I noticed it. And, some would say I shouldn't talk about it, but, that's me. I want to talk about it because we all struggle with this stuff. And so how did I talk to myself after that? How did I talk myself through that? Well, I had to do a lot of chatting with my inner child, my little girl, that inner Sally that was like a little bit thinking maybe she wasn't good enough to be there, comparing herself. I had to have a chat with her and let her know she was safe and remind her that she is enough. She deserves to be there. This is her retreat. And to just show her magic. Just do what's in my heart. And everybody will see that authenticity that we're going to talk about later. We're always pushing, always running, the constant chase. It's exhausting. How would it be if we accepted ourselves for where we are in the present, in the moment? I really want you to think about that. I really think that's important. And as we move through these 10, I'm going to do a couple of weeks on this self-love because I think there's a lot to talk about. And I want you to think about this week. I'm going to drop uh, some journal prompts in with this download and with this podcast. And I want you to maybe work through those, right? What does the phrase, even I am enough, mean to you? Reflect on that. Reflect on a time when you truly felt confident. What does that look like? What does that feel like in your body? Somatically, what's that feel like? Soma, the body. How does that feel? And how do you practice self-care and compassion for yourself? I was actually going to do 3 of these today, but I'm going to actually stop on this one. I'm going to do a series because I think I have a lot to say about these 10 um, self-love rules of Brene Brown's, and I really want to dig into them because I think this is really an important topic and it transcends so many things. And I hope that it hit something with you today. And I'm going to come back next week with a few more before we leave. I'm going to do that. I got a little sidetracked there. I'm sorry. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. What you are enough. You need to think about that. If you only do one thing this week with this episode, just think about how you are enough, how you are worthy, and how that matters to you. And the second one I'm going to leave you with today is sharing your whole story and your whole heart. And so this really resonated with me too, especially as a coach and an entrepreneur, because this was the second rule of hers. Share your story, share your heart. And what she shares is courage, the courage to move forward, the courage to show up in your true authentic self. And the Latin for core is heart, right? So showing up in our heart space. That is not always easy. Easy to say, not always easy to do, right? That's really opening ourselves up, getting vulnerable. And Brene Brown talks about the act of courage is the act of storytelling. So many times we don't want to release all that stuff. We want, some of our inner darkness, but as a partner, being vulnerable with your partner, showing that side of yourself, but as a coach or an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, stepping into the world and showing who you really, really are, embracing what lights you up, that is the art of storytelling and sharing your whole story with your whole heart. And sometimes that's really hard to do because we're not sure it's safe to do that. And so by telling your story, even the painful parts, right? The painful parts of your story, the painful parts of admitting that I had a little imposter syndrome in my retreat that I facilitated kind of opens me up to be people like, why would I want to go to her retreats if she has imposter syndrome? And I hope so. To me, I hope that doesn't happen because I think by being vulnerable, the retreat went amazing. The woman had a beautiful breakthroughs. It was in my head, it was in my ego about being perfect, right? So I like to share that because if there's entrepreneurs listening, people listening to this, I want you to know that those are like true feelings that come up. But if we embrace it from our heart, people need to hear what we have to say. They learn from us. They learn from those painful stories sometimes. And sometimes there has to be a little bit of darkness for us to see the light, right? I have to crack open some of my insecurities, dig under some of my armor for me to even be able to visualize the light and appreciate it. Because sometimes I don't appreciate it. And I don't know if you experience that. By sharing who you are authentically, you allow yourself to be seen. And most of my clients and myself and most of the people that I see struggling in the day to day, there's a couple things they want, and that's to be seen and to be heard, right? They don't have to be right. They have to be seen. They have to have someone actually see them and hear them. That's so, so important. And so opening your heart and telling your story, being authentic, energetically brings that energy out and attracts people. I think it's really, really important. Healing takes place when you get courage enough to show your heart. You can start to heal. If you keep suppressing it, which is what we do, we suppress the hurt. We don't talk about it. Maybe you lived in a family where they don't talk about it a lot. They don't talk about their struggles. We don't talk about that. Everything is perfect. It eventually will show up for you. It'll eventually rear its ugly head. That's what it does. It may be at a much later date, but it will. And it will show up in your triggers of the day to day, right? So showing up with your true heart is so important. It's a great, important part of starting to learn who you are and embracing who you are, even with your faults and imperfections. And the last one I'm going to leave you with today, and then we're going to come back and finish up with these, is engaging with the world, which was this was the other one. I was laughing. I'm like, oh my God, this is so much. I should so be doing a class on this, right? Engaging with the world, entrepreneurs, people, engaging with your families, engaging with the world, right? And if from an energetic place of worthiness, right? So if I show up with my energy, feeling good about myself, feeling worthy, then I will definitely, people will be attracted to that. People will totally be attracted to that, and I will bring them into my sphere. So showing up in the world from that energetic, grounded place is so important. You don't want to always be hiding under the covers. You want to show people who you are. You want to engage. You want to be grounded. And that's what I'm going to leave you with today. The first 3 lessons of Brené Brown's self-love. I am enough. I am worthy. Sharing my whole self, my whole heart with the world, and engaging with the world on a daily basis. And so think about that. I'm going to drop some journal prompts in for you. And I'm going to drop a couple of book selections for you about Brené Brown. I really want you to think about this. I'm going to come back with part 2 and finish up these 10 things. And I think that this is really a lot of great stuff to talk about. And yeah, I will see you next week. And I love you all. And yeah, remembering you are enough.